All right, welcome to round four, game one. We are on the play against an unknown opponent. This hand is a little bit slow. We don't really have a turn one play if you don't count Red Elemental Blast. We do get to go turn two Saga, play Painter Servant, turn three land, make Construct with Saga, or hold up Blast, or play Recruiter, depending on what's required. And that's pretty solid, even before accounting for what we may draw off the top of the deck. So I decided to keep this, and it's going to hold up the Blast and see what happens. Okay, and basic on Aether Vial is not something that you see very often these days, but it's pretty clearly Merfolk. And Merfolk can play Wasteland, so I'm not getting the second plateau with that fetch. But we do this painter anyway, so if he has a daze, it's not a big deal. We have a backup. So I decided to name Black with the painter here. I'm not completely sure that that's correct. The reason I did that was because I don't want it to become easier for him to play Force of Will by pitching an island that I have made blue with the painter. The reason to name blue anyway would be if we want to blast this Aether Vial, or at some point later blast a possible Chalice of the Void, or maybe some other weird card that he might play, maybe a Dismember on the painter. So I'm not completely sure about this, but that's what I did. Fortunately, opponent does not have a chalice, but he is able to kill the Urza Saga by making an island with this neat little Merfolk that got printed. Grindstone we draw off the top, so now we're just like waiting for mana, and we have the blast backup. And this is the point where Dismember first crosses my mind. I think maybe I should have named blue anyway. We draw the mana, and I decide that this deck does not really have a whole lot of removal. Like, the only thing that and even if he has a Merfolk Trickster to make the painter lose abilities, the color setting ability will apply on an earlier layer. So we don't really even have to worry about Violin, a Merfolk Trickster. But there could still be, I don't know, some weird card. Uh, I'm not sure what it could be, but maybe there is one. So I decided not to just grindstone him on his turn. Since we have this blast and we have plenty of life, we can afford to take a few hits, hoping to draw mana, so we can just do anything. When True Name Nemesis comes down, and okay, well, he has to have something for the Vial on three uh, to stop the painter, and I'm guessing that he doesn't have it. So I just groundstone on his instep, and that was good enough. So there. Uh, well, there's not a whole lot of uh, Merfolk running around, but we do have some pretty good stuff against them since we have a deck full of Red Blasts, we can board in more bolts and more removal. So they're basically the way that I'm sideboarding here is to decide what are the ways I could possibly lose and what can I do about them. And there's really only two ways to do that. One of them is if he just runs me over with combat, which is stopped by a steering bridge, assuming that we can get our hand low enough. The other one is if he sideboards into Thassa's Oracle and Paradigm Shift. And to do that, we really want ways to pound the stack. So Red Blast, uh, Canonist doesn't necessarily stop it. Sometimes it can, but Canonist is so bad otherwise that we're just going to get rid of it. So those are the ways that we lose. Karn, kind of slow. It's nice that it turns off Aether Vial, but we don't really need to turn off Aether Vial to win the game. It costs a lot of mana, so it's easy to get stuck in our hand against the Snaring Bridge. And we just need to cut something to bring in all of these pieces of removal. So I decided to cut the Karns. Since we're cutting all three of the Karns, the fourth Grindstone comes in out of the board. I decided to bring in the Pithing Needle to name Aether Vial, and in case there's some weird card that shows up, just in case. Naming Aether Vial can be important. Uh, imagine that, uh, let's say that we are relying on a Goblin to do something useful, and he's able to flash in a Merfolk Trickster and turn off the Goblin. Anyway, it's a French thing. You probably will be fine if we don't bring in Pithing Needle, but I do like the idea of being able to turn off Aether Vial. Canlis, like I said, doesn't really do anything. Blood Moon doesn't really do anything against the deck with lots of basic islands. It has moments of turning off things like Cavern of Souls or Mutavault, but I'm just not that worried about it, about those cards. Enlightened Tutor and Imperial Recruiter, again, I'm mostly cutting so I can bring in these other cards. I think if I were to play this match again, I would probably keep the Pithing Needle on the sideboard and keep the Enlightened Tutor in the deck to find Ensnaring Bridge, but part of the reason I took out the tutor was because I expect there to be wasteland, so I don't really want to be fetching plateaus if I can avoid it. In pure recruiter, since we're bringing in bridge, I prefer to kind of trim down on recruiters just because they tend to fill up your hand a little bit more. Again, it's kind of a small thing. There are a lot of small differences in card quality once you get past the four removal spells. But anyway, so that was game one. I'll be back for game two. And now game two. This time we're on the draw against Merfolk, and this is pretty much the one of the best hands we could ask for, except we don't have an answer to possible Chalice. But he won't be able to play Chalice on turn one unless he's playing Lotus Petal or something. So we can probably just turn one Grindstone, eventually play Painter, and have mana for Grindstone. And in the meantime, we've got two ways to deal with creatures. If we don't need the Pyroblast to deal with a creature, we can use it to protect Grindstone against counter magic. So this is pretty good. Opponent's not turn one Chalice, so we're going to just run out the Grindstone. And I named black here for the same reason that I did in game one, that I don't want to make it easier to for the opponent to play Force of Will by pitching a land or something that I've made blue. But I think in game two, it's much less correct to do that because it's much more realistic possibility that the opponent has Dismember or something of that nature. And it's also a bad idea in this particular situation because they have Pyroblast in hand. So in retrospect, I think this was the wrong decision, but oh well. Anyway, so the idea here is to uh, still Pyroblast maybe a creature or I don't know something. You don't see a whole lot of Merfolk. I'm not completely sure what they have, so I just want to have this Pyroblast available. And that's another reason to name blue with the painter. But anyway, holding out the Pyroblast here, and the idea is to uh, next turn Grindstone if possible with Blast backup. Anyway, so the opponent attacks here, and I decide not to block. So I'm afraid there's going to be a vital creature anyway. We'll save ourselves a little bit of damage by uh, using the lightning bolt on that lord before they get too large for bolt to handle. And we're somewhat punished for naming black because the opponent plays Pithing Needle that we can't really do anything about. So we draw land, and at this point we don't really have a way to get this Pithing Needle off the table because we can't Pyroblast it because we named the wrong color with Painter. And Goblin Welder can't do it because he doesn't have an artifact in his graveyard. And we can't put one there with Grindstone because it's turned off by Needle. So I decided that we're just going to have to get rid of this City of Traders now. I've been reluctant to play this Urza Saga for the whole game because of the, I forgot what the name of the one mana Merfolk that, when kicked, can make something into an island. But it destroyed the Urza Saga in game one, and I think we're going to need all the mana that we can get. Um, in retrospect, it might have been a good idea to play the Saga. I don't know, but anyway, I decided we just have to get cards out of our hand because at this point we may need to hope to top deck in the Snaring Bridge, and for that reason, that's another reason to just play the lands, and we have to get rid of the City of Traders. So we went from having a very good hand to being in very desperate straits, and it all just boils down to naming the wrong color with Painter. I tried to get cute, and now we're getting punished for it. Yeah, and so now the idea is to block with that painter so that it's in the graveyard and we can weld the grindstone for the painter, this time named blue, blow up the pithing needle, and then hopefully either find the another grindstone or an artifact to weld in exchange for the grindstone, or just find a Searing Bridge to shut down the game. But instead we draw land, which I decided to play. Again, not playing the Ursa Saga, because at this point we may need all the mana just to cast the Searing Bridge. Yeah, and at this point, we're taking a lot of damage, and so I decided that we're probably just going to have to top deck the bridge naturally. So I go ahead and block with the welder to bring back the painter, uh, cashing in the grindstone. Um, yeah, thin the deck out a little bit with the fetch, hope to draw bridge. We don't draw bridge, we lose. And that's what happens when you name the wrong color. So, as I said, we went from having an excellent hand to losing the game because we named the wrong color. Don't name the wrong color with painter surfing. Anyway, so now that we've seen Pithy Needle, I changed the sideboard a little bit. We had in the sideboard a portable hole. Uh, I decided to bring that one in exchange for another Imperial Recruiter. So now we're going down to two Recruiters in the deck and two portable holes in the deck. Uh, Portable hole is removal that doesn't care about the power toughness on any of the two mana Merfolk. It can also deal with Aetherfile, and under the right conditions, if you have a Welder, you might be able to deal with the Chalice as well. But most importantly, it just deals with Pithing Needle, since that's the card that we now know about. And we already have the Rip Apart in the deck anyway. Some of this is just me getting angry about the Pithing Needle and all that. I don't think you really need to bring in the second portable hole in this matchup, but it's pretty good. Since they are probably unlikely to be able to destroy it, since they're mono blue, and if they bounce it, it's not probably going to be that much of a deal. So I think it's fine. Anyway, we'll be back for game three, and this time we'll name the right color with Painter. All right, we're on the play now for game three, and a little bit wiser. Wise enough not to keep this hand, which is complete crap. Unfortunately, this hand is not really much better. If we trust ourselves to draw a red land off the top, a land that produces red mana, this hand could be pretty good, but never trust in this deck to give you lands off the top. And at this point, we're looking to keep five, and I really just don't want to go any lower. We have some good things here. We've got a red blast. We have the combo. We have an engineer to recur the combo. All that we're really missing, unfortunately, is basically just mana. But we have, Crater Make for removal, Blast for removal, Engineer to find Bridge. Since we're mulliganing to five, it will be easy to get our hand low enough for Bridge to lock up the game. And all we really need to do is draw like one or preferably two lands. So at this point, I decided to chance it because I really just don't want to go to four. So as for what to put back, unfortunately, I think the Lotus Petal has to be it. Has to be among the cards. We don't really gain very much uh, by keeping it, and we definitely want to keep the Grindstone and the Painter. We want to keep the Red Blast. We absolutely have to keep the Mountain, and Engineer can go find Bridge. So really, the two cards that we need the least are Crater Maker. For one, because it uses a lot of mana, and two damage might not be enough. The opponent has lots of lords, and Lotus Petal. So kind of by process of elimination, we're going to bottom those two. And as usual, just to get Chalice out of the way, we're going to run out the Grindstone, and it eats a force, pitching a Tide Shaper. That's what that one mana Merfolk was. Opponent does have Pithing Needle, but he did not name Goblin Engineer. He named Grindstone, which I think was the right name. So we're just going to go ahead and get the bridge into the graveyard. And so now if we draw any artifact or any land, we can use the Painter as the artifact. We can just put bridge into play and hopefully lock up the game. And fortunately, we have drawn lands on the next two turns. So I go ahead and play the Painter named Blue, using this Red Blast, hopefully at some point to get rid of that needle. But not just yet, because we don't really need to. Might as well attack since we're not blocking with the card. Okay, but I am going to Red Blast the Pithing Needle now, and the reason for that is that if it works, then I can end-step exchange Painter for Grindstone, untap Grindstone, hold priority, bring the Painter back and exchange for Grindstone. And at this point, the opponent's also tapped out, and that he'll also be tapped out with this Aether File, so there'll be no Aether File tricks either. And it's basically just, does he have a Surgical? And we'll know about that on uh, we'll know about that by the time this turn is over. We're about to find out, and doesn't has it. Okay, we draw mana, which we don't need. So we're just going to go for the combo. The other reason to do that here is that we're just so low on resources, having mulligan 5, that I think we just need to be a little bit more aggressive with going for the combo. No need to try to play a controlling game bridge. Anyway, so combo on our turn is good enough, and we win. And that's what happens when you name the right color with Painter. So remember to name the right color with Painter. We'll be back for round 5.